So, mistake number 3, match type. All right, so we talked about this a little bit. We're going to get into it a lot more depth right now. Google explains and explains and explains match type, but people still screw it up big time, okay? Um, Match types control how much leeway AdWords has in serving ads close to your keyword. So again, if you have a broad match, it gives them super license to serve up for any terms people are searching for. Phrase match is a little tighter, and exact is really, really narrow. So again, let's say your client sells wedding rings, and I've had this happen with some clients. So exact match would mean like, I'm using Inside Out as a reference here. So okay, so someone actually has to type in the term wedding ring. If you're using wedding ring, exact match, they have to literally type in wedding ring exactly to trigger the ad. If they typed in the buy wedding rings, it won't show. Exact is really, really relevant, but it's very low volume because most people type in some variation of the main keyword. Almost nobody just types in wedding ring. They type in like buy a wedding ring, I need a wedding ring, cool wedding rings, tungsten wedding rings. And again, when you do it in AdWords, this bracket indicates exact match. So you can see here, exact match is a bracket, phrase match is the quotes, broad match modified is that plus we talked about before, and then of course broad match is with nothing. And of course what happens to most clients is, because they don't understand the plus, the quotes, and the brackets, they just leave it alone and they end up doing broad match, which is why their accounts suffer. So I say the exact match is like fear in Inside Out. You know, he's like the nervous guy. He's like, oh, I want to be very, very careful. Well, it's true. You'll get very, very relevant clicks, but you'll get very low volume. Then there's broad match. Smashes up AdWords accounts. This destroys AdWords accounts. This is terrible. This is also how Google makes a ton of money from people not understanding match types. And again, sticking with Inside Out analogy, I'd say this is broad match. It's the anger guy in Inside Out. Rah! So broad match is the biggest problem. Okay, broad match, ring or wedding rings equals disaster for an AdWords account because Google will go nuts and serve it for almost anything involving rings. And I mean, we had this. Someone had wedding rings at broad match. It served up The Ring, the movie. Get in the Ring, which is a Guns N' Roses song. Ringing in the ears. ring in my what was it? Something in the bathtub. Like there was dirt in the bathtub in a ring shape. The other problem is that this is the default setting. Again, if you type in a keyword as wedding rings with no quotes or brackets, it's going to go to broad match. So this is why millions of small businesses get trashed with irrelevant clicks due to broad match. You can tell an SEM manager because we rarely use broad match. You know, more on this in a minute, but let's talk about the third and fourth match types. Frankly, these are the best ones to use when starting any account, a happy medium between broad match and exact match, and you saw me using them when I set up my accounts, and they are going to be broad match modified, which is like joy, the happy, the good one, makes for a happy, joyful AdWord account. Wedding rings, broad match modified. If there was a search that had the word wedding and the word rings in its variations of that, it would serve it up. So black wedding rings on sale, rings for weddings. It's more relevant searches, but it also gives Google room for variations. So if someone types in something wild like I need to buy a ring for my wedding this month, it will serve up. But if someone types in lyrics to Get in the Ring, Guns N' Roses, it will not show up. And that's one of the reasons why it's such a good option. And then there's phrase match, which is very similar, as I explained and showed you in the other video, just to refresh your memory. It shows with the quotes. I have a lot of quotes there. I know it's a little confusing. Wedding rings in quotes. So it would show for the search buy wedding rings, but not rings for wedding. It has to actually, for a phrase match, it actually has to have the phrase in the right order. And there's actually a link below here. In one of the links, you can see Google's example of that. But I'll just go back in here and walk you back through the let's just take a quick peek at these in action again. So let's go to general metal terms. So remember, metal building, I click search term, which we're going to talk about next, and you can see metal building, metal building, metal building, metal building, metal building, metal building, the term metal building, and there's all these variations, and it serves up. And these are pretty relevant terms. The conversion rate isn't as good as I'd like it, but these are definitely, it has the phrase metal building. The broad match modified here, if we see what actual terms showed up, metal for building displays, metal storage building. So that one is, this term isn't that great, but you can see it's got the term metal buildings, but they're not right next to each other. And now I am going to show you, and I'm going to show you again when we do the analysis of this account, but I'll just show you what I mean by broad match being so terrible. So I'm going to show you what this account looked like. Actually show you this terrible campaign here. So this is how these morons had this account set up before. So let me see here. 1 second. So just to give you an example, so this was a campaign these guys had set up, and you can see they did all broad match. The only one that's broad match modified, I don't know if I might have put that in there, but I think they did it. The most popular keyword during this time period was metal building kits, which, by the way, we don't even sell those, but that's an example of an agency who didn't pay attention to the client. But if I look up the search terms here, I mean, give me a list of commercial buildings in Lexington, Kentucky. Buildings for sale on Rogers Street in St. Louis, Missouri. Graceland Portable Buildings, make a payment. Diamond State Pole Buildings, Apex Metal Buildings. Leon Buildings, Johnson City, Tennessee. Google Champion Metal Buildings. These are terrible. Pictures of big metal buildings with homes attached. And then we're paying like $8 a click for these clicks. It was terrible. The best one, actually, I'm not going to show you here, but when we do, it's either in a video I already recorded or I'm going to find it again. One of the best and most irrelevant terms came up in here. Let me see if I can, actually, I want to see if I can find it. It was so classic. Here it is. This is my favorite one. Fallout 4 awesome building. So we paid $4. Somebody typed in Fallout 4 awesome buildings. And if you know what they meant, they were talking about a video game. So Fallout 4 awesome buildings is like they're looking for images of this from the video game Fallout 4. But because the morons who were doing the AdWords for our company, getting paid thousands of dollars to do it and doing a terrible job, they did broad match. Our ad served up, and we paid $4, and somebody called in. And then when they got us, they went, "What?" And I don't even know how they ended up calling, because it says they converted. Why would they call? But you can just see confident of service for buildings. A quality one pole buildings, LD buildings. How can you get better phone reception in a metal building? This is why broad match is terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And I will, if you take nothing else from this part of the training, I want you to get that broad match is terrible and you should never ever use it. So, phrase match, broad match modified are your best friends. Again, broad match has improved a little bit, but you know, the battle of AdWords is in keeping Google's automation at bay. They automate things to make it easier because they're saying, hey, it's so easy to advertise on AdWords, but it makes them more money. Because here's the deal. They come along and they say, use broad match, and they don't really care that our client is wasting hundreds and thousands of dollars, you know, spending $835 that month on these terrible, you know, terms. Someone, we're getting, we're getting irrelevant clicks, and paying $8 a click. Google's making money no matter if we make money or not. So an SEM manager's job is to control the account and make it perform without automation. You want to control the account and make it better for your client. Example, again, you're selling hats for women. So a typical advertiser just sets it to broad match and leaves it to let Google figure out ladies' hats is also a good term to target. A search manager says, no thanks, Google, I'm going to do that. I'm not just going to say broad match and let you serve up every term and its mother. I'm going to make an ad group specifically targeting ladies' hats, and I'm going to do broad match modified and phrase match, and then I can control the bids, and I can get the most clicks for the cheapest click cost, and I can measure it. So I know this is a lot of information. I hope it's making sense. This combined with what you learned in the first video and in some of the resources I shared with you, you're going to get a better understanding of this as you keep engaging in it. But basically, you have to be in control of the account. You can't let Google do all its googly things. That is how people end up blowing thousands of dollars with no sales. As you learn more to do this, you're going to have better performance, happier clients, and happier employers at the agency where you're working. So, as far as match types go, remember, exact is useful, but I rarely use it. It doesn't have the cojones. It just doesn't get enough volume. Broad is trouble. Broad match modified is your friend, and phrase match.